I have installed back here on my Shopsmith my shop-built speed reducer. It's a jack shaft, relatively easy to build. Currently have it attached to my bandsaw, but it can also run your scroll saw, jigsaw, really any of the SPTs or special purpose tools that you might want to mount on your Shopsmith. And it reduces it, I don't know, 10 to 1, something like that. Now, Shopsmith also makes a speed reducer. Now, this thing costs hundreds of dollars more. Can it do more? That's the big question. So in this video, we're going to check this thing out and see what it can do. Now, I believe I'm going to have to break this video into two parts just because I'm a busy man. So I think in this video, we're going to focus on the things that maybe you don't know that this can do. You might know that we can use this for lathe turning, which is really probably its most popular use. So in this video, we're going to focus on a couple of the less popular uses. And then in the next video, we're going to turn that chunk of maple. So for some reason, this high quality piece of plastic from Harbor Freight, this tachometer, is misbehaving. In fact, I put the reflective tape here on this pulley and it wouldn't read at all because it's just getting too much interference. So I've moved the tape over to this end. This is going to give us the same RPM, somewhere around 700 RPM roughly. And then let's see how much slower we're going over here at the bandsaw. So without this, the slowest we can go would be 700 RPM. But let's check our slow speed here. And we're getting 736. And that gave me a reading of 204. I'm not sure how that works out mathematically, but it's slower. Certainly slower than 700 RPM. And that's good, but can we get even slower with the Shopsmith speed reducer? There's very minimal assembly required for the speed reducer. Got a drive hub. We've got a clamp that you will see how that is used. A couple bolts and a couple washers. So that means we've got something here that's threaded. Let's double check the manual and make sure that we get those mounted in the right position. Can we trust the picture that's on the cover? No, that's interesting. This is showing the clamp mounted closest to the headstock end, and this exploded view shows the clamp mounted to the opposite end. So that's great. Okay, now what? I got this thing assembled backwards, I guess to make it fit the package better. There we go. Try this again. I've said this before, when you've got a stamped washer that's got a burr on it, you want the burr facing out. You don't want the burr cutting into the metal. It seems wrong because the burr is facing out where my wrench is going to go, but that is the right orientation. Now we leave that loose right at the moment until we follow the next step. So for our next step, we want to make sure that we've got everything aligned properly on the lathe. I've put a long extension on my tailstock. I've got my headstock set back far enough that I have to extend my quill because the further I get these things apart from each other, the more it's going to amplify any error that I'm getting. Now, I want you to notice that if I loosen the headstock, that you can see it moving. At least I can see it moving. So it is important to make sure your headstock is locked before you double check all of these alignments. Did a whole video on that, but we're good here. Now I'm going to swap out my drive center for the drive hub that was provided with the speed reducer. And again, I kind of forget where this thing goes. I don't think it goes all the way on. Let me check the instructions again. Fully seated. Yep. Bad memory. I'm going to get my tailstock out of the way for now, since I don't need it. And I'm going to slide the headstock back just a wee. Now, you can see down inside of this, there is something of a coupler, and we're going to align that coupler so that the spline is at 12 o'clock. Yeah, I lined it up at 6 o'clock. Yes, that's what's supposed to happen. All right, with that, we can tighten this onto the quill. Again, I'm going to tighten my headstock, make sure it's in place. We can tighten this clamp down onto the weigh tubes. And remember with all of that our two bolts are still loose, or should be loose. There we go. At that point, it should be resting at the proper position. I'm going to come back with my tailstock, and we're going to slide all this forward just a bit and make sure that we are in fact still centered. And we've got a little bit of adjustment that we can make, and then we can tighten down those bolts. This is a one-time ever alignment. There we go. That's it. So this thing is now aligned. Let's use it in a weird way. All right, in order to use this here for speed reduction, again, the high input end that would normally be attached to the headstock is here, and the driven end is here. Now, inside of this, there is a short little coupler that we're going to get out, and we're going to position that on our bandsaw. So you just line up the set screw, and we can loosen that coupler right there. I'm going to take this hub off of the bandsaw, and this is going to go right on in its place. All right. Now, this needs to have, does that fit? No, yes. So we're going to put that hub right here on the end of the machine. And this is going to plug in like so. And then we'll lock this into place on the end of the mark. All right. Make sure everything's properly seated. Okay. Now this gets driven by a coupler. And as we know, there is a headstock end and an accessory end, and that needs to fit onto an accessory hub. Somehow I've come up a drive hub shy, but this goes down inside the machine, and we can do this before we install it. In fact, that's probably a really good idea, Scott, but you know, we're already there. And we're tightening that on. So basically what we have here is the exact same hub that would normally be on the bandsaw itself. And so we should be able to take this and slide the headstock over and connect that to the coupler. All right, with all that in place, let's give it a quick try. And let's check that with the tachometer, our fraptometer. We are going 76, 77 RPMs. That's exactly 1/10 of the speed we were getting over here. 1/10. That's amazing. What would you use that for? Well, have you ever tried to cut plastic on your scroll saw or your bandsaw or your jigsaw? It wants to melt the whole time you're cutting. Or cutting metal. It wants to dull your blades going so fast or lose its temper. So that's slick, but there's more. This hub was seated all the way on the quill, locked in place. Let's put this little coupler back inside. Again, it's got a little flat that we're tightening that set screw against. We'll slide that on. We got to get everything to line up. Here we go. Tighten that machine screw. And then for this operation, I'm actually going to leave this clamp loose. Now, what operation are we talking about here? We're going to put a chuck on the end of this, and we're basically going to be acting as a quill extension. I'm going to bring this headstock up a ways. Yeah, this can take some muscle to move it into the drill press position, but that is exactly what we're about to do. How you feel about that drill bit right there? That is it's a 2.5-inch Forstner bit. We're going to add this while the machine is laying down, make it a little easier on myself. And then I'm going to bring everything together. And away we go. We need something to back it up and something to drill. How about this? I got a chunk of cherry, 8-quarter cherry. And now let's try that right about there. There we go. Sped it up a bit because it seemed to be going awfully slow. I guess there's no reason for that bit to be going under 100 RPM. But you can see drilled about 1 inch deep. 1.5 inch diameter. 2.5 inches in diameter. 2.5 inches. Okay, just as I feared, I'm out of battery and I'm out of memory. So we'll wrap this up by summarizing. Yeah, you can use the Shopsmith Speed Reducer for drilling. You can use it for driving accessories. I can't use mine for drilling, and I certainly cannot use mine for what you'll see in part 2, which will be turning on the lathe. I appreciate your questions, comments, and cheap shots in advance. And in the meantime, make it a great day. This is a one-time ever alignment. Maybe we ought to put this at the back of the video or add it to the Q&A.